This is a short session entitled ERP Selection Best Practice. I know from talking to some of you yesterday that it's your intention during the coming months and at some point during this year to select and implement a new ERP system. Clearly for most of you that's why you're here. What I'd like to do in this session is to take you through some tips, I guess, some takeaway points, some guidelines that would help you in your selection process. These are tips and guidelines that we within BSM have picked up over the years, and they're quite important to take account of, and sometimes they're overlooked. So there's 7 key points that I'll take you through, and I'd encourage you when you are doing your selection processes to build some of these points into the process and make sure that you get the best outcome for your company. First of all, it's extremely important to have a realistic budget and to do that as early as possible in the process. Now, the budget for an ERP project is usually quite straightforward to determine the cost elements, but often quite difficult to quantify them early on in the process. Typically, it's made up of software licenses, which is the cost of the software itself, the implementation costs, which are typically external costs, the cost of the ERP vendor or any consultancy support that you would use during the implementation. Software maintenance, which is an ongoing cost. Year after year, you'll pay maintenance in order to get support for your product and to be entitled to upgrades. And that typically can be 20% of the initial software license. Infrastructure costs. It might be that your existing infrastructure needs to be upgraded or even in some cases completely changed, and that cost needs to be estimated and included in the budget upfront. Internal resources. Now this is one that's often overlooked, and quite often in ERP projects there's a significant and important need to have internal resources on the project, and that causes difficulties with the day-to-day business. And there may be a need to backfill for some of those key roles, and that backfill cost should certainly be included in that initial budget. It's a very real cost to the business. And finally, with any project, given the amount of variables that there are, and particularly in an ERP implementation, it's always important to carry some contingency, and particularly if you've got multiple levels of approval to go through and boards to talk to, you want to make sure that the initial pot of money that you secure has sufficient contingency built into it to cover any eventuality that might happen during the implementation itself. So the takeaway point would be to work out a complete and realistic budget as early as possible in the process, typically during the benefits case, and to make sure that you've covered all of the cost elements adequately.